All right, what's up, guys? Today's topic is going to be resource management. And when we talk about resource management, the main resource that we want to focus on is Sword Intent. And the reason why that is because Blade Storms, we go through a lot of Sword Intent because we're trying to reduce the cooldown of Illusory Blade, right? So when it comes down to resource management and Sword Intent management, you have to look at how do we get Sword Intent back. And the main ways that we covered earlier was using 2 stacks of your Snow Silence, right? Or using Blade Pentagram. Now, when you're using, Snow Silence, it gives you back 5 Sword Intent immediately, right? Regardless of how many you have. You can go ahead and you can pop that. And then Blade Pentagram, that gives it to you over time. And so you can pop that and you'll see that it'll just continuously give me back Sword Intent. Now, one thing to keep in mind when you're using Snow Silence and Pentagram also is the importance of Bright River. This is the reason why I think this is a crucial core glyph for Blade Storm, because of how much Sword Intent it gives you. And so you pretty much never run out of Sword Intent as long as you have that 10-second Blade Pentagram buff up. Another way that you can get back Sword Intent is through using Star Shower, right? This is a melee range ability, and you can throw it out and you can get that Sword Intent back. You notice here it gives 1 Sword Intent back every time I use it, but it's important to know that you can only get that Sword Intent back if you land the skill. If you're not landing the skill on a target, you get nothing back and you just use up mana. So it's very, very important to land these. And one thing that I see people doing is that they'll run out of Sword Intent, they'll have no cooldowns, right? And what they'll start doing when they have that is that they'll start going for Star Showers then, right? I call that the Desperation Star Shower, right? When you have nothing left and you just go into melee rage and start spamming that Star Shower like, there's no tomorrow. And this is bad because if you get forced into a position where you have to walk into melee range and use your Star Shower, you might end up having to burn some important cooldowns. Like you might walk into melee range and you might have to blow your CC break, right? Or you might take a lot of damage in return because melee Spellswords are not that tanky. And so if you have to walk up to like a Reaper or, a Zerker or something like that, it might not be safe, right? And so you have to really be careful of when you use Star Shower. And that's why one of the things that I do is instead of using Star Shower when I'm completely out of resources and cooldowns, I like to use Star Shower before I run out of cooldowns. This way I can sort of make it so that I don't ever run out of cooldowns. Essentially, I'm never running out of Sword Intent. And the way that I do that is I always look for free opportunities to use Star Shower. And so what I mean by that is, for example, let's say I'm up in melee range, right? I'm throwing out some RMB LMBs, and let's say if they have a healer, right, it's important to land that first healing reduction. But after that, maybe I have, maybe I already have Illusory Blade ready and I'm holding it to dodge an important skill or something. I can go ahead and I can use that time to just get in maybe 1 or 2 Star Showers, right? You don't have to be spamming it, but you can throw in 1 or 2 here and there just to keep your Sword Intent, topped off a little bit. Or another example is, let's say a Bard is in ice, right? Instead of doing nothing there, right? What you can do is you can use that opportunity, take some time to get back some of your resources, right? The Bard does not have to take damage in order for you to get back Sword Intent when you Star Shower. So it's very important to keep note of that. Even though they're immune to damage, they're still a valid target and you still get Sword Intent back. So always very, very good idea. Make sure that you're not forcing yourself into a position where you have to use Star Shower. Make sure you use it at a good opportunity instead. Now, I'll also talk about the glyph. Another way to get Sword Intent back is through this glyph here called Cloud Break Wave. And this is why I recommend this, especially for newer players or players who are having themselves, finding themselves having trouble with Sword Intent management. This is a great one. Even if you're good at managing it, this can be a great one because of the fact that every time you have 1 or less Sword Intent, it'll give you back a free 2 Sword Intent. And this is a 30-second cooldown. And so, in addition, if you're using this with, free Star Showers, you won't have a problem at all with Sword Intent. And because you can have multiple procs of this glyph, in an entire round, right? Especially if the round goes really long, you'll get so many additional Sword Intents. And, this can really come in clutch, right? Let's say your illusory blades on a 3-second cooldown or something, and you just need that very, very fast sword intent, and that can be, it can be a game changer, absolutely. And so that's why I recommend that glyph so much, especially if you don't need the defensive other glyphs. It's a great glyph to pick up. So now I want to talk about some common mistakes that I see players make, right? One common mistake, obviously, is players using up their resources way too fast, right? They go ahead and they just burn everything, right? They burn the sword intents from Snow Silence, they burn it up with Blade Pentagram, right? And that's, like I said, it puts you into that bad position where you do have to go ahead and force yourself to put down Desperation Star Showers, and that's not a good position to be in. So that's one mistake that I see players do. But another mistake is that sometimes I see players holding on to their cooldowns for too long, right? They try to get as much value as possible, and sometimes that's a bad thing to do, right? Like I said, Snow Silence gives you back 5 sword intent immediately. What they'll do is they won't activate Snow Silence until they completely run out, right? And so they won't get that buff, they won't get that, that extra skill Snow Silence until maybe it's too late, right? And so maybe they finish the round, they don't even get to use all their cooldowns. And so that's why it's important to not hold your cooldowns as well, right? Sometimes you do need that damage from Snow Silence, right? Sometimes you do need to throw down Pentagram, for an ally to help them peel, and so there's different situations where sometimes you can't afford to just hold on to your resources. You do need to use them accordingly for their different purposes. Obviously, if you can afford to, you never want to use Blade Pentagram and Snow Silence at the same time if you don't need to, right? That's just a waste of resources as well. So it's a very, it's a fine line. You do need to gauge what's going on, right? How long is the match going to go? Is the match going to end fast and I need to just burn my cooldowns, or maybe I'm getting focused and I need to go ahead and burn cooldowns so I don't die, right? And, or, if it's a longer game, then you can go ahead and play for that maximum value, getting the most out of your Snow Silences and your Pentagram, right? So it's up to you. That's why I've tried to provide you tools, try to provide you the explanations so that when you're in those different situations, you can make the right decision on what you need to do. So another common mistake that I see people do is, let's say they do run out of sword intent, right? Let's say they use up all their resources and they're not careful, right? And what I'll see them do is they'll only have 1 sword intent left because they're not watching how much sword intent they have. And they go ahead and they use RMB, right? And if you don't have any way to get sword intent back when you only have 1 sword intent, it's not worth it to use RMB because you can't get that LMB off. And so RMB on its own is very weak. There's no value from it at all. And so they're just panicking, right? Because they realize they just completely ran out. And that's why it's important to keep an eye on your sword intent. You never want to use RMB when you only have 1 sword intent. Okay, so that's why it's very, very important to keep track of your sword intent and make sure that you can use LMB. Because honestly, if you use RMB with only 1 sword intent, you're better off just waiting, even if you're doing nothing, for the 2nd sword intent to come back. Another mistake that I commonly see people do is they're wasting their sword intent because, let's say they use the first RMB, right? You only have 3 seconds in order to use the LMB, the ranged LMB. You'll see that it changes pretty fast. And so maybe they use the first RMB and maybe they need to throw out a CC or something, right? Or maybe they get CC'd and then they have to CC break it and they forgot where they left off, right? They forget if they can use the LMB or not. So that's why one thing that I do is I go ahead and I hotbar the LMB. This way, if I'm ever not sure whether or not I can use the ranged RMB, I can look at the hotbar and I know for sure, okay, my LMB is still available, or I know, okay, I need to go ahead and use RMB again, right? Because let's say your LMB is not available and you use it, you throw out an auto instead, and that's also a bad scenario. So you don't want that happening either. So it's definitely important, I would say, because 3-second timer, it's not easy to keep track of. You're doing one thing, you're doing another thing, things are always going on in matches. It's impossible to keep track of all the time. It's very useful to keep track of whether or not you can use LMB in the first place. And so another thing when it comes to resource management that I see people do is this is not sword intent related, but this is just with general cooldowns. I'll see them pop Snow Silence, right? They'll pop the first part, they got the buff, they're happy, they're using their skills, right? They're fighting, and then before they realize it, 18 seconds has passed and they completely forget to use the second part, right? They're not keeping track where it says here, it shows you that you have the selflessness buff active, and it shows here, right? Obviously where you have your buffs, they completely forget to use Snow Silence at all. And that's also a waste, because Snow Silence is a huge part of our damage when you do use it. It's a good deal of burst, and it's also got that very, very important 40% healing reduction, right? 40% healing reduction is nothing to laugh at. It's a very significant amount, and very few classes have access to more than 40% healing reduction. So very, very important to keep an eye on these things. And very important to keep an eye on your cooldowns and your resource bar as well. And then the very last thing that I see people do, this is rare, but I see sometimes people will, you know, the worst case scenario is you end up in a position where you have no sword intent, no cooldowns, and you have no sword mana because you missed the star shower, right? So that's why also you don't want to use too many, you know, star showers. You can also use RMB, LMB to regain mana for your star shower, but that's not used as much, but it is something that happens, right? And you just never want to be in that situation in the first place, right? So this is a quick little video just to give you guys a heads up, and you know, a very, very important topic, because I see it happen so often that people waste their resources. And you know, with practice, you know, there should be no excuse for it. And so I'm sure you guys will get the hang of it. If you guys have any questions, leave them below for me in the comments, and I'll look forward to making the next video, which I hope to be a commentary video where I look over some footage from 3v3. I have somebody who was kind enough to allow me to present in my YouTube video their own 3v3 footage, and I'll go over and I'll commentate what's going on in my mind, what I think I would have done, maybe some suggestions, right? Point out some mistakes. And I think that's one way that we can look at it, and so it'll be easier to, you know, maybe get some sort of direction on what's going on in the fight. And I hope you guys look forward to that. If you guys want to send me your footage, if you want to be featured in that upcoming video, feel free to send it to me. I'll link my Discord information in the description box, and I look forward to, you know, seeing your footage. I think it'll be great. Thank you guys, and I'll see you next time.